So if you want to scale a company, you need to observe nature. My name is Charlie Morgan, and I've been able to successfully scale a couple of companies. I built a marketing agency to 7 figures called Northflow Consulting. We signed 350 clients and we sold the business and we sold the clients we had. It was a good day. And now I run a company called Imperium Agency, which is a multi-7-figure coaching business that helps people build client acquisition systems. This YouTube channel exists to help you acquire more clients and have more fun and less stress in your business. So as I said at the beginning, if you want to understand scale, you just need to understand nature. So when we look at nature and how nature operates, we can observe that there are laws, underpinnings, and ideas and principles and fundamentals, whatever synonym you want to use to, describe a fundamental. There are things that we can use and observe in nature and apply to business to explain how business works. And if you understand nature, you kind of understand business, because nature is a force, right? It's basically a force of really testing. And what I mean by testing is nature sets an environment, right? Which is, it could be a desert, it could be the oceans, it could be, it's got all these different environments and climates, right? And the environment sets the conditions for the survival of the organisms that inhabit it. And the organisms that have traits that are conducive to its survival, for example, if you live in cold water and you are a seal, it helps to have a really thick blubber so that you don't freeze to death. Seals that have thicker blubber are more likely to survive than seals that don't. But seals that have blubber that are too thick prevent them from being fast enough to escape polar bears. So there's this balance in blubber, and the seals that have that balance are the ones that are more likely to reproduce because they don't freeze, they don't get eaten. It's natural selection. It's a principle that governs pretty much all of the world and all of nature. Now, Darwinian theory aside, right? You exist in an environment. Your company, your business, this entity that you're trying to build, it exists in a big circle, which is an environment. The environment that we operate in as business owners is the market. The market is basically a aggregation, a culmination of every single interaction, relationship, and method of communication, if you like, between all parties relevant to your specific business. So your market consists of everyone in your niche. It consists of all your direct competitors. It consists of all your indirect competitors. It consists of all the customers of the businesses that you service. And it consists of everything that your niche consumes, for example, the news, right? The market is basically the all-seeing eye of everything that your business has to contend with when operating. So an example of the market could be me in making a YouTube video for you. You're part of the market. So it's basically everything. The main thing to know about your market, the main thing that you have to abide by is the niche that you operate in alongside the competition. When we observe nature, we observe that there are two things that are basically always going to be existing: competition and niches, because a niche plays a specific role in the overall environment, the overall function of the environment, and it carves out this tiny little piece, and that tiny little piece is exactly where it lives and survives and breathes and reproduces and propagates. That's basically how organisms work. And where there's a niche, there will always be competition, because there's always going to be competition for a niche, because it's how you survive. If you want to survive and you're a species, it generally helps to carve out a niche and then operate in a specific function with specific tendencies and traits, and that's how you survive. And if there's a method of survival in the harsh climate of an environment, competition will naturally manifest to compete over that survival, because that's really what nature is all about. It's just survival. We can observe this as applying to business, because you have a niche, you carve out your niche, which is a type of business you work with, which is the market, and then you have the competition on top of that niche, which is everybody else competing for the same niche because you want to compete for survival. It's a very simple premise, right? You can extrapolate nature into business and it helps you understand this thing, and then you can look at it clearly and be like, oh yeah, that makes fucking sense. Scale. Once you've established a niche, you need to establish survival. If you're starting a business, you cannot scale it. And what I mean by that is you cannot scale what you haven't proven, right? Scale is upstream of proof. And what I mean by proof is a proof of concept. In nature, we call this signs of life. So in nature, if nature introduces a new species, let's say COVID-19, technically it's a virus, not a living, breathing thing, but a virus. Nature introduces COVID-19, which manifests from wherever it came from. People say it originated in China, but there's a set of genetic DNA-based variables that nature has produced, which have then manifested COVID-19 as this virus. COVID-19 had genes and DNA that made it very conducive to survival, because it was good at infecting people and it didn't kill its host. COVID-19 had genes that made it a good virus in the sense good enough to scale. Nature proved COVID-19 on a small scale. It gave it signs of life. It gave it proof of concept. So COVID could affect like 1,000 people, and those 1,000 people would go on to affect 10,000. And as soon as nature established proof of concept for COVID-19, which was survival on a small scale and strong success within that survival, then it scales it. And this is how we see the exponential curve, non-linear hockey stick curve of COVID-19, where we have this tiny proof of concept and then suddenly scale. So if you want to scale your company, you have to prove it works on a small scale first. There's something in biology, and I don't know exactly where the discipline's from, but it's sort of like systems thinking related, fractals. A fractal is a term that basically is used to describe that how something performs on a micro level is how it will perform on a macro level. So an example of this with business and running a company online is running Facebook ads or YouTube ads to acquire clients. When you're building YouTube ads or Facebook ads, you have to sort of have three fundamental things: your niche, which is your audience, your offer, which is exactly what you're selling and how you're selling it, and your result, which is explaining the result of the offer you have. If you want your ads to be successful, you need to prove the niche, offer, result combination on an organic basis first, because cold email and cold calling and cold messaging is like, it's like a petri dish. Like imagine the organic attraction, like cold emails, cold calling, cold messaging. It's a petri dish, right? And what you do on the petri dish is you put on your variable of your niche, you put on the variable of your offer, and you put on the variable of your result and your overall message, right? How you communicate that. You put those three things in the petri dish. The petri dish has conditions for survival of certain traits, which is an environment. It's a small contained environment. And if these three variables are conducive to survival, then your cold emails and your cold calling, your cold messaging will work, and you will start booking appointments. And because organic basically operates in the same market, the same environment as ads, then ads is how you basically put fuel on a fire. Imagine that you're in the woods trying to survive, and you light a fire, and when you start with this tiny little flame. And if the kindling you use and the nature of the environment is conducive to a fire being lit, then you'll start with this tiny little flame and these little bits of kindling and these little scraps that, this little flame will start to bubble up and you start to develop a fire. That's what organic attraction is. And that's going from 0 to 10K a month in a business. It's lighting a little flame to see if you've got something here that can actually be caught, right? Can this thing catch fire? And if it can, then you'll find a little flame. This will manifest as a business going from typically 0 to 10K a month. 0 to 10K a month is basically just trying to establish a proof of concept, carving out a niche and trying to survive against the competition. Once you've got this little flame, lit down here, then you can start putting on bigger logs that send the flame up further. And that's what ads do. And that's what sales reps do. And that's what content marketing does. Nature will not scale a string of DNA that hasn't been proven to survive in the short term, in the immediate survival mode. So if it introduces a new species of wild horse to some African plains, if the wild horse, like the new one it produces, like the small ones, can't survive, then they won't go on to reproduce and scale. But if they are really conducive, then they will. So my point here is that the secret to scaling a business is proving it works on a small scale first, and then basically understanding that how something functions, how a business functions with 5 clients is probably similar to how it will function at 25 clients. Now, there are other facets of this that we have to bear in mind, like the law of diminishing returns, non-linear scaling factors, and other things that come into play when scaling. But generally speaking, in the broad sense, the overall model, which isn't always going to be representative of reality, but is pretty useful, is that micro equals macro. So if I have a sales rep and I give him 100 calls and he closes 20 deals, if I give him 1,000 calls, he should close 200. And often the key to scale is just volume. If something's working, do it more. And that's literally all you have to do. Scale is just volume times proof of concept. But you have to establish the proof of concept before you can establish scale. An example of volume specifically is just running ads instead of doing like emails. Because if you're sending emails to 100 people a day, which is intensive labor and manual and requires a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot of room for mistakes there, if you can run ads to show 1,000 people, exactly the same people a day, the same message and offer and a combination of variables that you would on the cold email, and you can do that through ads, then you'll see the same result, because it's the same environment and conditions and psychological situations that the prospects find themselves in that make them conducive to becoming a client. All right, that's everything. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, like it if you liked it, and any videos you want me to make, you can comment down below. I'll see you in the next one.